It's time we give back. Sow a seed and show someone where love's at. Even if you don't give a dime, give your heart and share your time. Help somebody else in life. Give back. Let's give back.
Welcome back to another edition of Ignite, Empower, Transform. Hello, my name is Hosea James Cavan II, and we are in part 2 of an interview with Greg Perry. Greg, it was so captivating, the interview that we had with you, the first portion of it. And unfortunately, we weren't able to get to some of the key parts of your life. And one of the things that we like to do in this segment is share with our audience, kind of bring us up to date in terms of what you're doing today and some of the story in terms of the path that got you to where you are today.
Surely. What I'm doing today is that I'm the owner of store number 8, which is known as Crown Trophy. It's what we call a feel-good business. And it's a business that we make an effort to MRI, to motivate, recognize, and inspire. And we do that with awards of excellence, plaques, trophies, medals, and anything that brings recognition to people in general. And the path that got me there started back in 1985. 1985, of course, I was lecturing at Borough Manhattan Community College. I was part of the Health and Phys Ed program. I was also the assistant track coach. And in 1985, my son was hit by a car and died. And that just changed my whole life. Not only did that happen, that same month, Mr. Ford, the executive director of PAL, he died of a heart attack. And the new director, Dr. Ryan, asked for my resignation, and I wouldn't resign. And as time went on, I ended up leaving the agency, actually being fired from the agency by some accusations, and he said he didn't like my management style. And I ended up swearing that I would never work for anyone again unless it was on terms that I could live with. And that's when I started my own video production company. And then I did that along with selling awards, and it was called Awards on Call. I would take my plaques and trophies and take them around the city, and I was basically a third-party vendor. And I had a company to make all the trophies while I did all the marketing. And from that, I met a man named Chuck Weisenfeld from Crown Trophy, who's the CEO. And he said to me that he wanted to give me an opportunity to buy a franchise. And I used my house to take some equity out and bought the franchise. And starting next year, we'll be in business for 30 years.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you,
man.
thank you. I have no regrets, okay,
That's amazing.
on it. To say, was it difficult? The answer is yes. The first 2.5 years, we were in a section of Waterbury. We had a fire, and
Waterbury, Connecticut?
no, Waterbury is in the Bronx.
Okay.
It's first is Westchester Square, Waterbury, then Throgs Neck.
Gotcha.
And Waterbury is usually between Westchester Square and Bruckner Boulevard.
Okay.
And so we had a fire after 2.5 years. We got burnt out there. And we moved to our current location, and we've been there for like 27.5 years.
And that's on East Tremont?
East Tremont, 2554 East Tremont, which is directly across the street from the Honda dealership. Met some phenomenal people from every ethnic background you could think of. I've learned how to say hello and how are you, whatever, in about 6 different languages.
Yeah, you and I were talking.
Yeah.
You were breaking it down in about 4 or 5 languages.
Oh, listen, it has been an amazing experience. We've done plaques in Hebrew, we've done plaques in French, in Spanish, of course, in English. And it's, Crown Trophy has become a hub for a lot of people. But one of the things that I did want to say during all those years and before that, before 1985, one of the things that we did, I always wanted to use track and field as a stepping stone from the inner city for people to have what we call experiential education, to learn through travel, to learn about cultures through travel. And this is something that I consistently, wanted to do over and over again, for me to give back. And why? Because I wanted to empower young people, okay, to let every person know that they have greatness within them. And it was part of my responsibility to find the key to unlock that greatness. And this is what I wanted to consistently do.
Okay, okay. So that being said, we have 2 minutes left in our show, and it's in this segment. And I'd like for you, this has been very inspiring and uplifting, and I appreciate you coming on and being a part of our program. What would be your message that you would like to leave for our audience?
The message that I would like to leave for the audience is that we cannot give up on our young people, and we must consistently empower them, inspire them, and let them know that each person that's out here has greatness within them, and it's every adult's responsibility to be able to find that key to unlock that greatness and guide them in that path of the frontier that they've never known.
Powerful, man. Powerful. So, I just want to say, man, this has been one of my most inspiring interviews. And I know that we touched on so many things, but we didn't get into every aspect of some of the things that I know you've been involved with. I know you've been in the leadership position in the business community in the Westchester Square area. Mm-hmm. Can you just briefly tell us about your role in that position?
Well, I'm the president of the Merchants Association. I'm also as the president, I'm on the BID, which is the Business Improvement District, the Westchester Square Business Improvement District, with Lisa Soren, Executive Director. And what I make an effort to do is support the aspect of growing, creating foot traffic and creating a better community, and working with the local politicians in order to allow them to hear our voice of what our needs are. And this is basically what I've been able to do.
Fantastic. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. It's greatly appreciated.
Thank you very much. We'll be right back.
Lift every voice and sing.
Bronze Flag History Makers!
NBA Hall of Famer Nate Tiny Archibald grew up in Patterson Houses and attended DeWitt Clinton High School. He led the Boston Celtics to NBA championship.
It's time we give back. Someone see and show someone where love's at. Lift every voice and sing.
Michael Blake was responsible for the grassroots efforts with electing our country's first African-American president, Barack Obama. Currently, he is an assemblyman in the 79th District in the Bronx and is the vice chair for the Democratic National Committee. He's also my godfather. Bronze Flag History Makers!
So Dorrin, let's talk a little bit about black males and church. I actually want to lead this one off. I usually give it to my guests, but about 2 years ago, I decided that I needed to go to church. I decided to need to go to church for several reasons. There are just different things going on around me in my world, relationship-wise, a divorce, job, finances, just a whirlwind of things, and I couldn't figure out how to break this bad energy that was around me. And something kept ringing in my ear. It said, you need to go to church. You need to sit down. You need to sit down in a church somewhere, and you need to kind of find yourself. And for me, key is find yourself. Didn't say find God. It said find yourself. That's what it kept telling me. But it led me to church. And briefly, what I see when I talk church and I talk God is I kind of go back to what I was taught and what I've always heard, that God is in me. I am made in the image of God. God is in me. I am made in the image of God. So I've never had this strong belief that, some man is going to float down out of the sky and he's going to lay hands on the world and everything's going to be great. I didn't have it that way. That's not my thought of it. My thought is that it's a place where I kind of gain myself, gain insight to who I am, and make myself a better man by listening to myself. Now that's kind of my little 2-minute spiel on it, to give you a little bit of what my angle is. But I like to hear what you have to say about church, because you seem to be a little more embedded in it than I am.
Well, I tell you, I think that like my order in life is God first, it's family, it's my work, it's my community, and I keep it in that paradigm, because through God, my mother led me to Christ, and just things that she's gone through, and having a child murdered, having my father murdered, she always kept a strong spiritual sense, and she led me to just always trust God and trust Christ. And the beautiful thing about it, because I was extremely close with my mother, and when she left and when she was leaving, because she suffered with cancer, and there was a point where for six months before she died, I moved back to the Bronx and I was taking care of my mother. And when I look at that, my mother was my everything. But the cool thing about it is, towards her end days, I was praying to God to take her, and I was asking her to go, because I'm going to be okay. And I think when we have that belief that God is going to provide, no matter what we're going through, no matter what your finances, because I've had some crazy times with my finances. I've had my stuff out in the street, and that's just being real. And it's just, as a man, but the point is, no matter how hard it was for me from a relationship, no matter how hard it was me from financial standpoints, no matter how hard I might have been just beating on myself about just not being the person that I was, the one thing that I always knew is I can count on God. I had that relationship. And so when I see that, that's a relationship that, he's always pursued in us. And I think when we, just when we do things that in our minds, we know, we want to be better individuals, and we know that we're doing things because we know when we're turning away from just what is, I think, innate in us to say, okay, well, this might not be the right thing that I'm doing. Regardless of what we do, he's always pursuing us to have that type of a relationship. So there's nothing that we can't do that he's going to be ashamed of, that he's going to be, saying, I'm going to make you pay for that. That's not who he is. And I think when we accept that and just know he just wants to have that relationship with us. So just like when my earthly children, have challenges and they do things that disappoint me, it disappoints me, but there's nothing that they can do that will ever have me turn my back on them. I think that's the way that, our Heavenly Father is connected to us as well. So I think if more of us, meaning Black men, I think if we understood that, it doesn't make you less of a man, it doesn't break you or anything like that. And in fact, I think it makes you more of a man, because you have an order, a discipline, a divineness into how you conduct your life. And that's just magnificent if you can give that to your children. That's the legacy.
So right there, that part that you said there, having an order to your life. I think where the disconnect comes with Black men and the church is, too often we're talking about the pastor of that church, what the pastor is doing or not doing. I think that's where we get lost, because like you're talking, Heavenly Father and your belief from that angle. I'm talking where I believe it's about my spirituality and getting me focused on me. But I think we're talking the same thing. The loss is where these men start talking about the pastor and what the pastor is or isn't doing, instead of understanding that rule and guide, that Bible was put there and put in place for us to kind of have some sort of guidance. We need a manual. We don't know how to do things, and we need something that'll say, hey, these are the instructions. Now, how you interpret them is up to you. But I think we get lost in, I don't want to hear some man stand up there telling me what I should or shouldn't do. No one's telling you that. No one's telling you that. You have to figure this out yourself, but you need to be in a place where you can be introduced to those instructions. Yeah,
but I think the best place, and this is just my opinion, is I think the best place is when we look at our Bible. And if we consider ourselves Christians and we look at that Bible, and I think, as Christians, when we look to Christ and what Christ taught, especially in the Gospels, what he taught. And, from that standpoint, our faith, the foundation of our faith is not in an individual, is not in, what Jesus did before, he was crucified. The foundation of our faith is in the resurrection, because that is clearly an example of who he is. So when you look at, just everybody that rolled with him for years, that when he was at the point of the cross, they always like, nah, I don't know him. That's not my dude. I don't know him. But the point is, and they all were like that. They all were like that. All of them were like that. But at the end of the day, when you see him, just dying, and the next morning, like a few days, 3 days later, he's eating breakfast with you, then you say, okay, this guy is for real. Right. And I'm willing to do whatever it takes to push this message forward. And that's the only reason it survives. So when we look at it from that perspective, I don't think as Black men we should ever look to any pastor to say, okay, that is where we see our foundation. Our foundation lies in the resurrection of someone who we consider a savior and what he taught. And the biggest thing that he taught, the one thing that he taught, is just for us all to love each other. And I think, I talked to my wife and I talked to folks, and when you look in the hood, there's a lot of love in the hood. There's a lot of love in the hood. And there's some craziness, but dudes are like, that's my dude. Right, so if we can follow that principle, we're gonna be okay. Just love one another, and everything's gonna be all right.
Well, that's the key. That's what I tell everyone. It's about love. Love answers all of these questions for us. We can go on. I can see where you and I can talk about this all day. But unfortunately, we're on TV time, so we don't have that luxury. I just want to thank you for taking the time away from your family, and chatting with us. Maybe at some point we can get you back, because I know you talked about the entrepreneurial spirit in your family and your children. Yeah. We definitely want to give them an opportunity to shine. So we'll look to come back to you and talk about that a little bit more. But at this point, we're gonna say goodbye. Or I always tell my kids, don't say goodbye. We're gonna say see you later, and we'll catch up with you sometime soon, and we'll do this again.
Okay, cool. That'll work.
All right, I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Lift every voice and sing.
On April 3rd, 1968, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. gave his final speech here at Mason Temple, and it was called, I've Been to the Mountaintop. The next day, on April 4th, 1968, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was gunned down here at the Lorraine Hotel.
Because I've been to the mountaintop.
Lift every voice and sing.
Colin Powell was the first African American appointed as the U.S. Secretary of State, as well as the first and only to serve on the Joint Chiefs of Staff. He was raised in the South Bronx on Kelly Street and attended Morris High School.
Let us march on.
So we're back, and as you can see, the set has changed a little bit. We have a board down here and some new shoes. So what we want to do is we're going to talk a little bit about what you guys are going to see and what's going to go on, and then we're going to leave it to Jason to do what he does. Jason, tell me a little bit about what we're going to see now.
Cool. So what you're going to see is, as I mentioned earlier, that tap dancing is an American art form. So is jazz, and it's very closely related. So what we do a lot in jazz, we improvise, but within that improvisation, you have to have a structure. So the sounds that are coming out of my feet are like words, and those words create sentences. Sentences create paragraphs. Paragraphs tell stories. Stories change lives. So you would think about it the same way as you do grammar or like structure a sentence. You start with a capital letter, and then you have like a period, exclamation mark, or a question mark. And generally speaking, we do it in 8 counts. So like the 1 would be the capital letter, and the 8 would be the period. So for example, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 2, 2, kind of like that. And then within that, you want to like dance in between the notes, like 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E. And then you just make music and you tell your story, you know. If you're feeling happy, you are happy. If you are not as happy, you tell that story too, but you tell your story nonetheless.
So it's going to be pretty interesting to watch how you flow through this and get it from happy to sad or
Yeah.
mad or whatever it is. How did this translate, in your opinion? How did this translate when it was communication, when it was used as communication? How did that work out?
Well, it's like a lot of the way that we connect with each other, a lot of it is nonverbal. So we don't use words. And so when you do like certain things, you know, like if, I don't know, if you're a guardian or parent is like, you know, telling a child like,
It's the look across the room.
the look, you just know, no words are needed, and
Right.
you just make it happen. And like one of the greatest singer of all time for me, Ella Fitzgerald, she used to scat, and the scatting is exactly what we do. Like, for example, when I make up my dance, I'm going to improvise everything I do right now, but the song is in my head, and as the song is coming out of like my mouth, it's happening with my feet at the same time. So a lot of times when we dance, we scat at the same time, you know, and if I didn't scat, if you didn't hear me scatting, the music coming out of my feet will still match what's in my head, but I'll scat and do it. I'll do a mix of both. So,
Gotcha.
yeah.
You know, one of the things that used to fascinate me is when two dancers went back and forth and tried to one up the
Yeah.
other. I mean, what is that about? Is that friendly competition?
Yeah,
Sometimes looks like it's
yeah. I would always say it's friendly competition.
That's
You know,
what you say.
yeah, I would say that it's always a sharing of ideas. But you know, like you want to challenge your fellow sister, brother, like to the information that they have and that they're sharing. You know, if you know, like you're improvising or trading and they have a new step, you know, take that step, flip it and reverse it. And they be like, that's my step. It's like, no, it's actually mine because you shared it with me and now I'm just giving it back to you, you know. So, you know, so it's like all friendly. It's just all making music and sharing ideas. And I think when we as people can like really do that and share ideas and, you know, feel confident in what you have to offer, you're good to go. And then you could, you know.
So off camera, we were having a brief conversation about tap and hip hop.
Yeah.
And you showed us a little something there. What do you think about that combination and bringing something to the table on that?
Yeah, that would be wonderful because I'm from the Bronx. I love hip hop. I love rap. Biggie, you know, and then the OGs like KRS-One, and yeah, I think it's all a part of it. And I think what they were doing, they were tap dancing when they were spitting bars.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Ignite, Empower, Transform. And remember, if it's in your heart, do your part. Take care.
So does it make sense?
It looks good. I'll have Liz review everything, and we can finalize next week.
Sound good?
Sounds good to me. Excuse me, sir. You asked me to remind you about the game.
Hey, I have to go coach a game. I'm out.
You still coaching?
Yeah. How about you? You used to be so active as a kid.
Oh, man, I don't have time to be coaching no kids, man. I barely have time to sleep.
Why don't you do this? We have a game this afternoon. Why don't you come through just like old times?
Hey, listen, I'll let you know what I can do. I'm not making any promises.
I'll see what I can do.
But good luck.
Good meeting.
Great meeting.
Come through today, man. The kids need you, bro.
Listen, that's your thing. Me, I'm trying to get this money.
We need you, man. Come through, bro.
I'll see what I can do.
I see all your smiles and all the tears strolling down on your faces. But I know all the while it's gonna be okay, yes it is. Just open up your eyes. Open up your eyes. The sun is soon to shine. Aim your arrow high and keep reaching for the sky. It's time we give back. Someone see try to understand it, then we could give back.
Back to a time of sacrifice.
Like those before who paid the price. It's time we give back. Someone see and show someone where love's at. Even if you don't give it back, give your heart and share your time. Help somebody else around and give back. Let's give back. It's time we give back. Someone see and show someone where love's at. Even if you don't give it back, give your heart and share your time. Help somebody else around and give back. Let's give back. Just believe, dream your dream, spread your wings, be set free. Head up high, dry your eyes. Now's the time, shine your light. Just believe, dream your dream, spread your wings, be set free. Head up high, dry your eyes. Now's the time, shine your light. I see all your smiles and all the tears showing down on your faces. But I know all the while it's gonna be okay, yes it is. Just open up your eyes. Open up your eyes. The sun is soon to shine. The sun is soon to shine. Aim your arrow high and keep reaching for the sky. It's time we give back. Someone see and show someone where love